So hello and welcome to the sixth and final episode in this series of What It Takes, brought to you by UCD Alumni Relations and UCD Careers Network. We hope that these webinars help you to navigate your career by providing practical advice and tips delivered by expert speakers. This episode focuses on what it takes to manage boundaries when working from home. I'm Jenny Blake, Associate Director in UCD Alumni Relations, and I'm delighted that you're here with us today. And to welcome our speaker, SineadBrady, UCD graduate, founder and Chief Inspiration Officer at SineadBrady, and career and coaching psychologist. Sinead is a regular keynote speaker, corporate trainer and media contributor. Her specialty areas cover a range of topics including the future of work, friction-free flexibility, managing boundaries between work and life, and cognitive triggers, some of which Sinead will cover today. Sinead studied history and English here in UCD, followed by law at King's Inns, and then went on to work in education as a career guidance counsellor, while at the same time earning her stripes as a leader, educator and innovator. She studied part-time to specialise in the areas of career and coaching psychology. Sinead is also a mum to 3 young girls and has a busy family life and social life. I'm also delighted to congratulate her on the impending arrival of her 4th child, who's coming soon. So, fair to say, she's an incredibly busy person who has significant experience of managing boundaries between work and personal life, as well as training and expertise to back it up. I am genuinely really excited about this opportunity to hear from Sinead the tips as she presents on a topic with particular relevance right now, as the boundaries between work and life are blurred and more often than not, non-existent for those of us managing busy home lives and work lives from the same 4 walls during this pandemic. For those of you who've tuned in to previous What It Takes episodes, the format of this episode will be slightly more interactive and free-flowing. Sinead, ever the multitasker, will answer questions as they come up throughout the session, so please use the chat section to ask questions as they occur to you instead of waiting until the end. So thanks so much again, Sinead, for being here today. Over to you.
Thanks a million, Jenny. What a lovely introduction. Hi, everybody, and so nice to share a virtual space with you today, which I think so many of us have gotten much more used to sharing with one another. So what I would say to you is, you'll notice that I will look down, but I'll also look across. It's because I'm not actually in my own office at the moment, and I'm using 2 different devices. So please bear with me as I transfer or look between screens. Because I want to keep an eye on the Zoom chat, which I'd love for you just even to kind of go into now and say hi and, you know, a quick introduction. And if you have questions that you would like to ask throughout, I will try and answer them as well as I possibly can. And I know that the team with Jenny and Camille are kind of working feverishly in the background to add extra pieces of information in there where they can. So I've just said hello to everybody in the group chat, and I'd like to thank Camille and Jenny for such a warm and lovely introduction. Hi Circa, how are you? So I hope I'm pronouncing, and Catherine. So Ruth, how are you? So I hope I'm pronouncing everybody's names properly. I will do my best to answer each question as we go through, while also covering the content. And thank you for such a lovely introduction. Hi Thomas and Dee. Oh, Glasgow. So we're getting people from all over. How lovely. So I suppose just by way of introduction to myself, my business is called SineadBrady. And the reason that I call it SineadBrady is I think really what we're doing at the moment is we're all managing these multitude of people in our lives and multitude of personas in our lives. And the boundaries between work and life that used to exist no longer exist. And the SineadBrady piece just comes from myself managing all of the Anns in my life. So as Jenny said, I'm a mum, but I'm also an individual, I'm a professional, and I'm many things at many different times. But this is just the Anns that operate in my life at the moment. So I am SineadBrady. I'm a UCD graduate of history and English from the last decade, or sorry, from the last millennium. I graduated in 2001, so I'm not really sure how many of you might be kind of from in and around that era in UCD. And I went from there, as Jenny said, to study the undergraduate in King's Inns. And then I transitioned across to, so I changed and pivoted in my own career to date 4 times. And then I transferred across to Trinity, believe it or not, where I studied my master's in career guidance and counselling without studying to become a teacher. So it was the first time actually that people were kind of split between teachers and non-teaching guidance counsellors. And then can everybody, oh, 98 graduate, okay. Can you see the screen, but would you prefer to see me? Because if you tell me, I'll do my best and I'll stop sharing the screen because I can just chat you through it if that will be better for you. 94 graduate, Catherine, brilliant. So I'm now qualified as a psychologist, and so I'm a British Psychological Society qualified psychologist, and I'm currently undertaking my PhD in organizational psychology. I own my own business. I am a mother, and I am a sister, and I am a partner, and I am managing all of the different ands in life, much the same as you guys are managing all of the different ands in your life. But when I'm seeing the snapshot of kind of age of graduation profiles that are coming in and ages, so what I know is that we all have been taught, or anybody from that particular era, we're always taught you go to school, you do your schoolwork, you come home, you do your homework. Then if you needed to, you study. And you don't actually really take this time to switch from home to work and work to home. So we've been kind of, throughout our education process and throughout our work process, we've always just kind of kept going and managing all of the ands. And we've never really been taught the skill of learning to transfer or to cognitively trigger between home, work, life, and the personal as well as the professional, but also the individual in that personal piece. So today, with your support and your questions coming in, and please keep them coming, we're going to really talk about our focus as cognitive triggers. So the triggers that we can use to switch from home to work and work to home. Because at the moment, and particularly during this COVID-19 pandemic, we are not alone working from home, but we're also living where we work. And not everybody is privileged enough or in a privileged position to have a home office. And not everybody is in a position to have a separate space from which we can work. So it's really important that we begin to think about this notion of cognitive triggers. And these are the little brain games or the little rituals or the little tricks that we can actually play or we can build as a skill that help us to switch on to work when it's important to switch on to work, and to switch off from work when it's important to switch off from work. So for example, and just to give you a little insight, today I'm actually on 10 days annual leave, but I had committed to do this piece with Jenny and Camille and the UCD alumni before we booked our holiday. So we're in Ireland, we're down kind of south, and I had to try and figure out a way that I could switch on to do this work and be professional and step into the space, while at the end of it, my 2 little girls, the older ones, actually have their Fitbits. I was just suggesting, I was just telling Camille and Jenny, they have their Fitbits with a timer on it, and they're going to be standing outside my window shouting in at me when it comes to 2 o'clock, because it's then my time to switch off from work and professional Sinead into the mum Sinead. And then when they go to bed tonight, it's time to switch into the individual Sinead with my partner, but whatever that looks like for you. So we're all managing all these ands in our life. And we're just talking about cognitive triggers to help you to switch from one space to the other. A skill that we've never been taught. We really haven't, because we've been focused on switching on and staying on through school and then by doing your homework and so on. So what we're really thinking about is, how can we actually manage this? And at the end, I will send you through a link, and I think Jenny and Camille will also share it, that gives you an overview of what cognitive triggers are, that gives you an idea about how you might individualize your own process for switching on to work, and individualize your own process for switching off from work, but also will give you a kind of a help kit. I hate the notion of a workbook, but a help kit to help you to manage that, excuse me. So as we go through today, I want you really to give yourself a permission mindset. And this is really important as we embark on this new way of working, as we begin to think about working remotely, maybe shared working. So some working from home, some working from the office. So we're connecting with people in different ways, but we need a permission mindset. And what I mean by a permission mindset is permission to yourself, from yourself, to actually decide, well, you know, for now, what's really important to me is actually understanding what I need to switch off from work, what I need to switch on from work. So hi Nora, I've just switched to the camera view just for a minute but I will go back in to the slide view, but I can't go any larger, I'm afraid, but I will do my best as we go through. So to give you the slide view and to give everybody kind of a piece of what they would like. But the permission mindset is really important because it's about giving yourself permission to switch from one mode of life into the other mode of life, but also to acknowledge what you need and to acknowledge how you're feeling. So very often we've been taught, and we'll talk about it in a second, but very often what we've been taught is that you just keep going. You just get on with it, you just manage, and you just go from one part of the day to the next, and then when it's time to sit down and rest, do it. But then it's very hard to actually rest when you get to that point. So the permission mindset is about saying to yourself, I feel overwhelmed, or like Ursula just said, I have trouble switching off. I have perhaps issues around work-life balance. And I know that we had a question earlier from Paula, particularly in relation to mothers and women with work-life balance in relation to paid and unpaid work, which is a brilliant question, but a huge question, and I'll try and address it as we go through. But what we're saying is you're giving yourself permission to acknowledge that you are having trouble switching off, or you are having trouble switching on to work, or that you are having issues around sharing with your boss or your prospective boss, perhaps you're about to go into a new job, how you actually can manage work, because perhaps you don't have an office space at home. Perhaps you're actually working from your bed where you have your laptop sitting on your knee, or you're working from the kitchen table with 3 kids jumping around you, or a dog, or you might have other caring responsibilities in your home. So what's really, really, really important here is to give yourself permission to state how you're feeling. So I feel stressed, I feel overwhelmed, I have trouble switching on to work or switching off to work because I care about work, I care about life, I care about my family, I care about my social life, and you're trying to balance it all. So it's really about acknowledging the fact that you need to switch on and acknowledging the fact that you need to switch off from work, and then devising a strategy for doing that. Does anybody have any questions as we go forward around the permission mindset? Because swallowing it and not acknowledging it is not helpful to you. We know from the most recent research actually coming out of Stanford that just getting on with things and just doing things and being Pollyanna positive doesn't actually help, because the message sent between brain and body are 2 conflicting messages, and it actually makes you more anxious. Whatever the feeling is, you actually go into the feeling more if you don't give yourself permission to acknowledge the feeling, acknowledge the facts around the feeling, and then come up with a strategy for dealing with it. So okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and we'll keep going. Is that okay? How is everybody? No, Liz, don't be sorry. You did the right thing telling me. I asked. Thank you. The presentation slides are frozen for some reason, not sure why, but we'll keep going if that's okay. So what I would like you to do with your permission mindset in place is to give yourself a commitment, a 60-second commitment that you are willing to focus on over the next week. And with pen and paper in hand, just write down what it is at the end of today's session that you are going to focus on specifically over the next week to help you to switch on to work and to switch off from work. What cognitive triggers? And these cognitive triggers are very specific. Oh, thanks, Emma. That's very kind of you. We're going to start with a definition from psychology of what well-being actually is. So well-being, the science is telling us that well-being is the ability to function effectively as you navigate the highs and lows of work and life. And I think we probably understand and get that, but consistently is the piece. Are we able to do it in a consistent manner? Are we able to do it and merge and come over the bumps and the slides the other side? And that's actually what well-being is. Well-being is the ability to feel good and to function effectively through the highs and lows of work and life consistently as we navigate both. And the reason that I very much talk to you about that is because sometimes we think that well-being is something very different. And I don't know what your definition of well-being would actually be, but if you'd like to kind of put it in there and put it into the chat, let's have a look at that. But science is telling us that when you're physically, emotionally, socially, and professionally well, you have more energy, you feel more connected to ourselves and to other people, and then you have the energy, focus, and motivation to be productive at work. Coping with success, yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that we sometimes don't think about. Sometimes we think about coping with failure, but we don't actually think about coping with success. When things are going well, how do we manage it, and how do we integrate that into the ands of our life? And yes, stress can be good and stress can be bad. It's about managing it. And that's why acknowledging that the feeling is there, acknowledging what's going on for you is super important, because if you don't acknowledge what's happening along with the associated feeling, then you begin to enter into this position whereby you're stuck and unable to move. But if you acknowledge if this, whatever is happening with the stress, let that be, you know, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling sad, I love this working from home business, I just need to be able to switch off, or whatever that might be. It's about naming it and then moving on. So science is telling us, as I said, that it's about consistently managing the highs and lows between work and life. That's what well-being is. But here's the thing. So often we have this thing called, I call it the Macgyver Fallacy. So I see from the age bracket or from the areas, the years that you've graduated in, you probably know a little bit about Macgyver, but I call this the Macgyver Fallacy. And for those of you who do or don't know Macgyver, Macgyver was this guy with a penknife who used to emerge on a Saturday evening. I think we all used to watch it, or many of us used to watch it, either before or after Baywatch, I'm not sure. But he had a penknife and very little else actually. And he used to not even eat that very much. But Macgyver, yeah, you do know Macgyver. But Macgyver would ultimately save the world, possibly dismantle a bomb, and perhaps actually save a whole building on very little food, without anybody else being there. And he would usually emerge pretty unscathed, and he would just have a penknife with him. So the notion being that was perpetuated and has been perpetuated for a very, very long time now is that if you are productive first, well-being, oh, they're on repeats, I love it. So Macgyver's on repeat, guys. Maybe some of us should join into that. But the idea being that if you're productive first, well-being would come second. And actually what research is now telling us, thanks Clara, so what research is now telling us is that well-being needs to come first, then productivity comes second. So well-being first, productivity comes second. And that's why it's so important to remember that well-being is the foundation of productivity, not the other way around. And that work is a performance. And it is an endurance sport. If you take it, you know, it's an endurance sport. And to be productive in work, you must be well personally. So again, with your permission mindset in place, we have to, you can't see my chat. I'm answering you guys as I go. So I'm here in chat. Is that, yeah, so I just said to everybody, I'm here in chat, but I'm trying to answer your questions verbally as I go. So if you want to put them in there, thanks Rosemary. So if you want to put them in there, your questions, I'll try and answer them as I go. So the permission mindset is, what do you need to give yourself, permission to do in relation to the cognitive triggers over the next week in your life? Have you, for example, been putting productivity before well-being? And have you been switching off from work when you need to? Or have you been staying kind of always cognitively switched on to work? And then you're not actually getting to switch off from work from a cognitive perspective. So there's lots of things going on here. So just take a second, and can I ask you, have you been successful at switching off from work when you have been working from home over the last number of weeks? And if you can put that in, I'll type up the question here. So Rosemary, what are you doing to switch on and off? Not all the time, not really. It's so hard. Yeah, end up working till 10 o'clock. Very difficult, but getting better, not great. And you see, this is the thing. By walking in the morning, I love it, Oscar. How are you? And having, yeah, mostly yes, making a conscious effort. And the conscious effort, and then Fiona, I know that switching between both is really, really hard. I've struggled with it. Also switch the PC off and all technology off at 5:30. And you know what it is? That to some people sounds just like the most difficult thing to do. But what's really, really important here is to know this is a skill. It will take 3 weeks to make a habit, 3 weeks to break a habit, and 3 weeks to build a new habit. People are getting better. Some people are managing it. Mentally, it's not easy. The desk is right beside the bed. Yeah, so hard. Motivating yourself to switch on, really hard as well. So yes, it's a real challenge. I can see that coming in kind of across the board here. So what I would say to you is it's the permission mindset. So what you've written in here actually is, I'm having difficulty switching on to work. So that's acknowledging the feeling, and have been neglecting a lot of work lately. So that's what's happening. And the laptop is tied to the phone, so it's very hard to detach. Absolutely. And I can see this coming in. So you're actually just naming the struggle that you're having, or the challenge that you're having at the moment, or what you're doing well. Paying attention to your child, absolutely. And then you're trying to work after your child has gone to bed. I understand it is so hard. So you're actually naming what you need to give yourself permission around here, just in the comments. And as you can see, so many people have similar experiences. And then people who've kind of built the skill over time. Can I ask you, those of you who are managing to switch off and to switch on, was that something that took time to build, or something that came quite naturally to you? Again, no devices in the bedroom. If I could ask and beg of people to do that, I'm guilty of it myself sometimes, but absolutely hard to switch off on an annual leave. Yes, 100%. So this is the permission mindset. And know that what I tell you here is not going to work just because I say it, or just because you do it once or twice. This takes time. These are habits of a lifetime. Toddler at home, so hard. Actually, I see that. Work wife, I do know wife work at all, groceries delivered. Yeah, absolutely. So these are the things that are really important, but it's really hard to divide the two places when, like, you could call it working from home, or you could call it living where you work, depending on where you come from. And it's really, really challenging. But what I would say to you is, it's the permission mindset that's really important. Having a separate room is, yeah, starting in lockdown was a bit easier. So absolutely, this permission mindset, and you're all really getting into it here now. You're all talking about what the different challenges there are for you. So here's some of the things that you might need. It takes time. So please, a routine takes time. If you take it that you have been working for the past 20 years and you have built up, if you have built up routines around going to work, you need now to rebuild routines when work is a space rather than a place. And that's what we're talking about. So the cognitive triggers that I'm speaking to you about are rituals, routines, or reminders that signal to you that your brain has to switch on to work, and that it's time for your brain to switch off or switch down from work. It is really challenging when you're working in different time zones, when you are trying to manage short-term conflicting demands. So what I would say, yeah, the commute was a decompression, and I totally get that. So what I would say to you is, if the commute was your decompression, or it was your time or your space, how many of you are using that commute now to do other work? How many of you are using your commute time in other ways now that actually aren't giving you permission to have that decompression space, or that decompression time. And what I think here is really important is how you switch on into your day. So cognitive triggers are about physical, personal, and psychological tricks that you can send to your brain, signals to your brain, that you are about to switch on to work and that you are about to switch off from work. I'm seeing that you have recommendations or advice working from home with their partners and you need somewhere private to have a Zoom meeting and taking calls. So hard. You actually just need to sit down with each other, compare diaries. I call it Tactical Thursday. So integrate Tactical Thursday into your week and sit down together with what, you know, cup of tea, glass of wine, whatever it is that you want to do, and spend 30 minutes, 35 minutes each Thursday evening deciding, okay, so this is where I'm scheduling calls, this is where I'm scheduling calls, I need private space, you need private space, and you have the conversation out loud, because nobody can read your mind. And I know myself and my husband, and I see it about housework coming up here all of the time. For example, we would have had a standoff that he was completely unaware of. I would usually do the cooking, he would usually do the tidy up. We agreed to do that. It was absolutely, you know, in my head, I was like, oh, this is relief. We'd negotiated this. We'd be sitting down to relax in the evening, and I would be looking at the dishes on top of the dishwasher and the kitchen, an absolute mess. And I couldn't tolerate it, but I couldn't say anything because I just felt like we had to figure this out. And we ended up having this standoff for about 3 weeks where I was raging with him and he did not know why. So I ended up having to say, you know, can you please, for the love of God, just pack the dishwasher, clean up the space, because I can't relax with all of that out there. And he said, well, Sinead, look, I don't tell you how to make dinner. We've agreed that you would cook and I would do the tidy up. We didn't make an agreement about times. So Tactical Thursday sometimes doesn't feel that easy to do. It can be really frank conversations, but it's really important. So what we use Tactical Thursday for, and this is not something that just anecdotally works, this is actually something that we know based on science and evidence works. Tactical Thursday, you sit down and you go, what's coming up next week? Where was the struggle last week? What do we need to change next week? And whose help do we need? So they're really important things around those Zoom meetings and taking calls. And then it's about being really, really clear and frank with people in your workplace that actually, you know what it is, you cannot just drop meetings into my diary. You just can't drop them in, because we have one space at home that we work in. And in order for the two of us to be able to take our calls, our Zoom calls, we have to be able to top and tail each other or work opposite each other. And this is what we have scheduled for Zoom calls and phone calls. So just be really, 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 really clear, both at home and at work, because this is about communication. And as you are communicating this information, you're also building the skill of communication. So this is an example, for example, that you can use in job interviews coming up, where you can say, look, it was a really challenging time. We had one space from which to work. Both of us were trying to do calls. We had children at home, and we had to learn to manage, and we had to learn to project manage, time manage, and so on and so forth, really, really quickly. So let's start thinking about these things, and let's start thinking about your permission. The commute is the big thing. And the always on piece is really, really, really important. Nobody is a computer. Over the past, and the human skills that you have as an individual are actually the skills that will make you valuable, not just now, but in the workplace of the future. So the human skills of communication, of negotiation, of being able to be creative and innovative and so on. So it's really, really important. And these are the skills that separate you from an algorithm or a computer. You do not need to be always on. And if you as a leader or a workplace is suggesting that you should be always on, you have to ask yourself if it's the workplace for you, and if it's a conversation that you actually need to open up, because if you're feeling it, other people are also feeling it. And sometimes it's about saying, you know, just switching off. The running at lunchtime is brilliant for switching off. So what I would say to you about cognitive shutdown is these are physical, personal, and psychological strategies that you use, and they are simple. And you would have been using them all of the time on your way to work. So for example, you would have had your commute to work, but you would have taken your breakfast. You would have had your cup of coffee, got into the car, cup of tea, whatever it was, or you would have walked to the bus station. That was your switch on. So you had all these little mini routines that you were using on a daily basis to help you to switch on to work. So for example, you might have walked to the bus stop. You got on the bus, or you got on the Lewis, or you got into the car, or whatever it was. And then you began to read the newspaper, scroll through social, any of those different things are really, really, really important, because they were your brain's way of knowing that you were going to work. You probably put on maybe a bit of makeup, you might have put on a certain pair of shoes, you might have had work clothes. They were all triggers to your brain for you to begin the day. They were your beginning to switch on to work routine. And that probably took about 1 hour to actually happen. So what I would say to you is, think about the things that you could do to switch on to work, given your current circumstances, whether that be there are children in your home, you've other caring responsibilities. It might be that you need to take the dog for a walk. It might be that actually you need to get out of the house. But mimic the structure or the cognitive routine that you would have had in place for going to work to an office. So for example, it might be, so for me, it would have been a commute. I would have had quite a commute from Cavan. I'm based in Cavan. So it would have been out to the car, hair and makeup done before the car, and then cup of tea, and I would listen to Ireland, Morning Ireland on RTE to get up to date on what was happening. And then I would have maybe a 10-minute walk to the car, from the car to the office. That was my routine. And now to replicate that in the morning, and myself and my husband are both self-employed, so we have to kind of work it together. I will still take a walk, a 10-minute walk, just to switch on to work. I will always get dressed, and I'll usually put on lipstick. The other thing I will do is I will lock the door into the utility room and into the living room, because it means that I'm not actually, if I go in there for a coffee or to sit down with the kids or whatever it is, I know I'm going in there for that purpose. The locked door actually gives me that second just to trigger. I'm going in here to do something different. I'm not going in here to put on a wash, to clean up, or to do whatever it is. So really think about how you switch on to work and have that routine in place. It could be your clothes. It could be that you have a bag that you put, if you don't have a separate space, at least that you have a work bag, and you put your office equipment into that work bag at the end of the day, but you take it back out at the beginning of the workday. So it's really, really, really important to begin to have these triggers. So how did you go to work before? What did you listen to on your way to work? And then what did you do before work? So did you have a routine around coffee, around meeting somebody outside, and so on and so forth? So those routines to switch on to work are vitally important. And can I say to you that they should be switch on to work for 2 hours at a time when you are working from home. You should not be sitting down to work from 9 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock, not moving, not, as I said to you at the beginning, work is a performance. And you need performance breaks. And if anybody you're involved in sport or athletics or anything like that, you will know that in order for you to get faster or better at your sport, you need rest days and you need rest time when you're training. So it's really, really vitally important here that you switch on to work for 2 hour periods, and then you take a 15-minute break where you get up and you walk. You see what kind of a day it is outside, you get some fresh air, you get a coffee, but you move. And they are movement breaks, and they are absolutely vital to your productivity and to your well-being. Remember, none of us are that algorithm, and none of us are Macgyver. So let's really, and again, if possible, I can see that you're saying never work where you sleep. But for some people, particularly in shared spaces and homes, that actually is the only option. So if there is an opportunity, make your bed, open up the windows, and as you say, you might need to face a different direction. So if you can have a chair and a desk or something, that allows you the opportunity to have a different kind of orientation in the room. But the breaks during the day are 100%. So perhaps Rosemary, you're seeing that the breaks during the day. So say that you, again, name it, permission mindset. I struggle with taking breaks during the day, and going forward, this is my commitment. I'm going to take breaks during the day by doing X. And that might be starting off with a 15-minute break. But the 2-hour period is really, really important. Yes, absolutely, Michelle, very difficult to do those 2 hours with young children. What can be really, really helpful for that and for you is a very simple routine that 2 hours might not work for you. So not all of this is going to work for everybody. So it might be that actually 45 minutes work for you. The reminder on your phone is brilliant, Deirdre, yes. But the breaks are really important. Yes, it could be 90 minutes. So whatever suits your individual needs. But if what I'm saying here is don't work for 4 hours without stopping. Because if you do work for 4 hours without stopping, it can be really, really, really hard. I was on 12 hours nonstop for 2000. Right, okay, yeah, absolutely, Liz. It is really, really important to keep moving. So what I would say to you is, have those routines in place for switching on to work, and then give yourself a break at the end of 2 hours at a maximum. If you can use a traffic light system, if you've got small kids, a traffic light system works really, really well on your door. So if you have a separate space that you can go to work, you put up a red sign or a red lollipop or whatever you want to call it. And yes, the Garmin works as well, Katrina, you're right. So put the red sign up on your door and explain to your children, you know, when the red sign is up on the door, mummy or daddy is working really hard and it's going to be for a short amount of time. But it's really important that during that time, you don't disturb me. And then if it's green and you're kind of doing stuff that you could be disturbed during, put up the green sign and say, you know, if you're really under pressure or if you need something from mummy, you can actually come into me or daddy during this time. But the traffic light system works brilliantly with kids of all ages actually, and sometimes with adults who get a little bit hard to understand that you can't be disturbed. So the cognitive switch on is really important. And then the cognitive shutdown is the opposite. And the opposite to that is switching off from work, which I think sometimes we all have the problem with, particularly when work is a space rather than a place. So for example, when you're going between the work, you know, when you were going to an office, it was a very different scenario. So cognitive shutdown is the skill of going, it is now the end of my day and this is my routine. This is the end of my work schedule for now, and this is my routine to signal to my brain that it is time to stop working. So what's really important here is that, and as people have been saying, try and take the space that you have where you are working and physically pack it up. Switch off the laptop if that's what you're working from. Do not leave the laptop in view, because these are triggers. Remember, cognitive triggers. You have an association with the laptop, and that association with the laptop tends to be a work association. Absolutely, Siobhan, change out of the work clothes. That is one of the first things that many people do. You've got the work clothes, it's like the old work war, or like the Sunday clothes. You've got the work clothes and then the casual clothes. But absolutely change out of the work clothes. And then the other thing that you can do is actually go and take that 10-minute walk. And if going for a walk is not an option, it could be hula hooping, it could be stretching, it could be whatever. But it is just this signal to your brain that you are now switching out from work mode and you're switching to a different mode. So it's the transition period that's really important here. And it's to give yourself permission to have that transition period. So for example, as I begin to switch off from work and to switch into my new routine, into life, I am going to take my laptop, shut it down, put it into the work bag, and put the work bag in a press that you can't see it. Switch the emails off from your phone. So actually, I've just turned the email notifications off my phone. It's a brilliant thing because you're not getting all these notifications all of the time. But it's about having this transition period. It might be that you need to write down the things that you have, that you finished today, and go, okay, well, today was actually a bigger success than I thought it was, when I write down what I have completed. And then these are the following 5 things that I need to do. Removing email from your phone, if it works for you, absolutely brilliant. So what I would say to you is, you have this one piece, okay, there's apps with exercises and you can use them to stay healthy. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. So the cognitive triggers to shut down are as important. Write down, give yourself 5 or 10 minutes just to wind down before you switch the laptop off. Write down a completed list, things that you have done. Then write down a list of things that you are going to do tomorrow, because, you know, sometimes they bother you if you don't write them down because you're afraid you're going to forget them. Write them down. Literally close whatever work you have been doing. Let that be on the laptop, let that be with pen and paper or whatever it is, and physically put it into a work bag, whatever that work bag looks like, and put that work bag into a closed press so that you are not being triggered every time you see it open on the kitchen table or in the bedroom to go back into work mode. And then perhaps change out of your work clothes, then move to where you are actually physically leaving the house or doing something different. Do a stretch. Check out that csp.org.uk where it's just some active things that you can do. It might be that you take a large glass of water. It could be that you have a coffee or a tea. It's something that tells your brain that you are switching off. The thing that I find really brilliant for this part is in the morning time, have a routine for switching on that's auditory or that's kinesthetic. So auditory being a podcast, and it might be listening to the news, getting the latest updates, or doing a podcast or listening to a podcast that's very work related, even for 5 or 10 minutes as you walk around to do that, mimic that commute. In the evening time, switch it. And have a podcast that makes you laugh out loud. Have a podcast that makes you, or listen to your favorite radio station, or listen to some music and go down and dance with the kids if you've got kids at home. Stick on the music and dance with the kids. And they'll think it's great fun and they will love. Yeah, that's perfect. We'll be stopping at 1:50. So 5 minutes left, guys. If you've got any questions and so on, shoot them into me. But I'll do Q&A as well. Really begin to think about the methods that you are using to shut down. The dancing with the kids is brilliant because then the kids actually look forward to you, or dance with yourself, dance with the dog, whoever it is that's at home, but bring something kind of movement into it and have a little playlist set up. And that signals to your mind, but it physically releases hormones, and psychologically it releases hormones, serotonin, that switch your brain to a different type of functioning. And it's just a brilliant thing to integrate into family life or to different types of things. Thanks, Emma. So yeah, to just dance and do that, and that's your switch off now. And every time you think of it. But can I ask you please, because I know that I appreciate that we're doing this across lunchtime, can I please ask you to write down and to focus on what is within your control, and start with small steps. Don't decide that you're going to do everything all at once. And I hope that the work kit that you're going to get, or the help kit that you're going to get, I have just copied it on there as a resource for you, and you can download it. So you just go on, you download, you get a little email, and then you can download it. But it helps you to figure out what step you're going to work on for your cognitive triggers, and when those triggers are going to be applied, let that be as a switch on or a switch off. If there's questions, no, you're more than welcome. I just think it's so important that we try and integrate. So if anybody would like to put more questions in there, I was coming back to a question about switching between blended working, where some working from home and some working from the office. And one of those things is really, really important actually is the switch on and switch off when you're working from home, because you don't want to turn it into whereby you're just working all of the time. So what I would say to you is focus on the switching on to work and the switching off from, if you're working blended, focus on the switching on to work and the switching off from work. Really importantly, do that at for working from home first. And then when you're going into the office, the routine will automatically kick in for you. But first of all, focus on the working from home piece. Yeah, extremely difficult to focus on projects as always waiting for updates on public health and trying to start business again. Absolutely. And that's really important. And what I would say to you is give yourself and say that I struggle with working from home in a pandemic, because that's what's happened. We've never seen anything like this before. It's not easy to go into business again as usual or business as usual. But what I would say to you is give yourself touch points during the day to switch on to that news and touch points to switch off from that news, and make sure that, sorry, I'm just looking at another question, but make sure that you are relying on reputable resources, because there is a difference between worrying and being rudimentary over something. And worrying means that, like, oh, I'm really worried about this, but I can move on from it. Being rudimentary over something is you're stuck in it and actually can't manage to move on. So what I would say to you is actually give yourself the opportunity, maybe at lunchtime, 1 o'clock, if that's lunchtime for you, and again at maybe first thing in the morning, midday and evening time, and use them as checkpoints to see what's going on from a public health perspective, and then get your information from get your information from reputable resources. So don't kind of be looking at, you know, the latest feed on Facebook or whatever it is where people are just putting information up and it's scaremongering. Get your information that it's factual and fact-based, and use that then as a way of saying, okay, so now I have the facts, and now that I have the facts, this is what's going to happen, and this is what I'm going to do about it. Focusing on what is within your control is really, really important. And what would you suggest from going on annual leave but not going away? How do you stop yourself glancing at what's going on? Really important question. Again, this is about, if you feel that you can kind of go cold turkey on this and you can switch everything off, do that. Just kind of go, okay, I'm switching all off. I'm going cold turkey. There is going to be nobody that is going to invade this time. Emails are going off, phone messages are going off, and so on and so forth. If you are not in a position to go cold turkey, and for many of us, that's a really, really challenging thing to do, and you feel that you can cope with whatever emails you're seeing, I would say to you, give yourself a couple of touch points. So if you're not going away, give yourself a couple of touch points. So it might be maybe you're going on 5 days annual leave. I play holiday, I love it, I love that, really lively. But what I would say to you is, if you're struggling with the cold turkey approach, say that you're going to give yourself once a day an opportunity to check your emails and to check in with what's going on at work, and choose what's going on with work, and choosing a time for you that works for you to check in. But knowing that you're not going to engage, because checking in and engaging are two very different things. And again, own it. Say, I acknowledge that I am checking in, and I acknowledge that I'm making a decision not to engage. This is really difficult for me. However, this is important because I need this time off. I have to give myself permission to take time off. And if you can feel that you could do maybe 3 days where you take, and you, instead of checking in every day, you check in 3 days. So figure out a routine that works for you, write it down, commit to it, and ask for somebody to hold you accountable to that. Blended working is going to be really, really, really challenging. And the reason that blended working is going to be challenging is, I believe, that the worry of being in the office and the worry of trying to stay connected with as many people as possible is there. In terms of blended work life, it's about trying to establish some type of routine, if that's the issue, because I think that can be the issue for many, many people. You're afraid that the blended work won't give you the opportunity to have routine. So really bore down into the issue of, what does blended work mean to you? What does it mean to your organization or to the people that you work with? And then how can you have a really adult-like negotiated conversation that meets your needs? So if your need is for routine, give it for routine. If you're, and say, look, I really need routine and I need to know what blended working is going to look like. Is that going to require maybe that I get an email tonight and have to head off about tomorrow morning to work? Or does it mean that I know for a fact Tuesday and Thursday I am in the office? So really get into it. I'm just looking here at, and I know we've just got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to try and answer as many of these questions as possible. So put it through, being really strict with myself. Yeah, absolutely. Not check in on non-work days if you possibly can. Oh yeah, that advice on sitting or standing from an office laptop is really huge. I think do what feels best to your own body. And if you kind of follow me across my different social channels, particularly LinkedIn and Instagram, I talk a lot about your non-negotiables, which are the needs that you have to have around your physical needs, your personal needs, and your professional needs. And if one of those things for you is having a combination of standing and sitting, figure out ways that you can negotiate that with your workplace so that you can actually have somewhere to sit or somewhere to stand when and if needs be. There's a brilliant little desk that actually you can put on top of your own desk that will help you. Yeah, whatever your physio's doing, if that's what your physio tells you to do, go with it. There was another question there that I just didn't get to, I think. I'm going back up. I hope I answered your question, Carmel. The projects piece, again, is breaking projects into small pieces so that you can have manageable bite-sized chunks of your day. Again, try and have those little routines for switching on to work and switching off to work. Work-life blend is huge. There's no doubt about that. Blended work. What I want to say to you here is, and it kind of ties back to Paula's question, just as we're about to end up at the beginning about work-life balance and paid and unpaid work, there is a fabulous app called Our Work. And you can use it, Our Home, I'm sorry. And you can use it with either whoever is in the house. So it can be a family, it can be shared route, it can be a shared accommodation, or it can be just yourself and a partner, whatever your family circumstances are. And actually you begin to put a list of all of the different things into it that need to be done, and people take a slice of what they're willing to do and they commit to doing it. The brilliant thing for using with kids and sometimes with adults are you can build rewards into it. Our Home, sorry, I'll pull it up here and I'll put it in, and I'll put in the link. Our Home. So there we are. Did you hear the doorbell? I think that's my kids. Sorry guys, but that's all right. Our Home, I just put it up there. The link to Our Home so that you can kind of build it out to whatever it is that you wanted for yourself. So I hope that I've answered your questions. Again, I've put the link up whereby you can download the cognitive triggers piece on my website with just a little help kit to help you work through it. I'll send the email with the presentation that you didn't get to see, but thank you for understanding through, and you can kind of look through that. Remember the Macgyver Fallacy. It's not about productivity first, then well-being. It's about well-being, then productivity. And really give yourself permission to start with a routine of cognitive triggers, and then give yourself permission to do it slowly, piece by piece, so that you can actually just ease your way into it. Nothing happens overnight. Thank you so much. It was so lovely to have you. I hope I didn't overload you with talking and I got to answer as many questions. Did I leave any questions out? Everybody's in the same boat, Kira. This is the thing. And if you're feeling it, others are feeling it. Yeah, thanks. I will enjoy the holiday. So listen, it was so lovely to get chatting to you, and I'll send a presentation. You can get me on social, and again, I'm always kind of adding things and workbooks and stuff to the website. So it was an absolute pleasure to meet so many UCD alumni, and thanks to Jenny and Camille for the invite. Sorry, I lost my words for a second.
That's fine. Thanks so much, Sinead, for that inspiring presentation and for managing all of that interaction so incredibly well. Thanks also to all of you for being so involved from the outset. As Sinead mentioned, if you want to learn more about Sinead and her work, you go to SineadBrady.org to find out more. Thanks also for sticking with us through some of the tech glitches, as always adds to the fun. That was the last episode in the What It Takes series for this summer. We'll be back with a new series in winter. We'll also host a special episode of What It Takes for the graduating class of 2020 in September to try and support them in this really difficult time as they emerge into the workplace. So watch this space to find out more if you're in that class. You can also go to the UCD Alumni Network and to the Resource Hub to find the slides and the videos for this session, but also for all of our previous sessions as well. There have been 6 in all. Just one Other event I wanted to mention, we have a UCD in Conversation on August 13th, which is a conversation with Simon O'Connor, the director of Molly, the Museum of Literature Ireland, and Simon will discuss all the immersive exhibitions that they have going on there at the moment, including the new little Foilone one, which is absolutely fabulous and getting a lot of traction there at the moment. If you want to check in the chat, Camille is sharing the relevant links with you here. Just a couple of thank yous as we close out this series. I'd like to thank the UCD Careers Network for partnering with us on the series to offer our students and alumni direction at this difficult time. A special thank you also to my own team in Alumni Relations for pulling this series together at the start of the summer when everything was up in the air. So Camille Rogers has been in the background today, has led on the entire series and with significant support from Ria Flom. Thank you also to our wider Alumni Relations team who've been involved in the promotion of the episode, and obviously to our wider UCD colleagues, many of whom have taken part as speakers on this series. If you'd like to watch back the videos, you can find them, as I said, on the network, but also on YouTube. There should be a link going into your chat there at the moment. So finally, just to say thank you to all of you for joining us and for taking part so enthusiastically over the summer. We hope you've enjoyed the series and found it useful. Please, if you could complete the survey when you log off from this webinar, it really helps us to shape the content in the future. So finally, just to say for now, enjoy the rest of the summer and please stay safe.